All right, everyone, it is interview time. And I know that I open up so many of our interviews with this is a really exciting, special interview. But this is a really exciting and special interview because we are here today with the one, the only Dan Savage. I know I need like an
The
announcer voice.
legend.
The
He
legend.
is a legend.
The man, the myth. He's not a myth. He's a legend, and he's a real
Inspiration.
Yeah.
Inspiration.
We are so excited to have Dan Savage on our show. We just guested on Dan's show yesterday. I don't know when that will be up, and that was just a joy for us. We're like, fangirling out over here. And now
like we're
Dan
swapping facials. You came on mine, so I get to come on yours.
Perfect.
Exactly.
There's Dan Savage, everyone. We probably don't need to see a lot for the introduction, but yeah, so happy to have you here. And we are going to explore all kinds of things, Dan Savage, consensually, of course. But before we do that, Dan, can you please tell our listeners how you got to where you are today in the field of sexuality?
By accident. I met someone who's about to start a newspaper in the very early 90s. It was 1990, actually. And he was telling me about his newspaper, and I looked at him and said, "Oh, you should have an advice column because everybody reads those. You see the Q&A format, you can't not stop and read it." And he said, "Excellent advice. Why don't you write the advice column?" And it's hard for people to imagine now, but then the idea of a gay guy giving sex advice to straight people in a straight newspaper about straight sex was almost on its face absurd and ridiculous, that a gay guy would tell straight people what to do, because straight people like to tell us what to do or what not to do, especially in 1990. And the column was going to be a joke. I was going to treat straight people and straight sex with the same contempt that heterosexual advice columnists had always treated gay people and gay sex with. I grew up reading Ann Landers and Abigail Van Buren and the Playboy Advisor. And every once in a while they would answer a question from a gay person, but they always kind of treated us like a turd on a fork. They were just kind of like holding us at arm's length and not wanting to get too close or seem too approving of that turd on the fork. And I was going to treat straight people like that. And it was going to be for like 6 months or a year and just like a joke column. But straight people had never been treated like that in print before and loved it and started sending me lots of real questions. Because I think, now looking back, I read into earlier experiences in my life that were kind of setting me up for the career I have. When I first came out, all of my straight friends started coming to me for advice about sex, which is weird, right? The girls thought, well, he's a guy, he gets guys. And we both sleep with guys, but we're not in competition. And the guys thought, well, the girls are confiding in him and he sleeps with guys like the girls I want to sleep with guys. And so I had this kind of like straddling both worlds perspective that my straight friends benefited from hearing my thoughts about. And it just kind of took off with readers. And within the first year of writing Savage Love, it was syndicated and it became a real advice column as opposed to a joke and took off. And then 10, 12 years later, Nancy Hartunian came to me and said, let's do a podcast. And then the Savage LoveCast took off. And now it's been 32 years, 33 years I've been writing Savage Love and 16, 17 years doing the LoveCast.
You just have this approach that's no nonsense. You give zero fucks. I've received so much great information from you, but even when we were recording yesterday, and sometimes you say things you're like, I don't know, I just think that they should have an affair. Like we were talking about something from your show, a question from a listener on your podcast. And I love that because you're like, yo, sometimes things don't have to be sugar coated. You're still sex positive. You're still a sex educator. You still teach millions of people about their own sexuality, but your approach, it makes sense that both men and women, like especially in the straight world, came to you. I would not come on you, but come to you. Because
the thing I really did differently when we started the column, and it was a really conscious choice, and it was really brave of the publisher, Tim Keck of The Stranger, which is where my column originated, was I said to him, let people use the language they actually use when they talk about sex with their friends in print, which really nobody had done. When you wrote about sex in print, you had to kind of write in this medicalized sexual Sanskrit. You also had to write about the sex that everybody agreed everybody ought to be having, but not everybody was having, or not everybody wanted to have. And that was part of what was really revolutionary about Savage Love at that moment. This was one place where you didn't have to say perform fellatio. You could say I sucked a dick, right?
Yeah.
In print, in a newspaper. I just read your book, Shameless Sex, before you guys came on my show. You guys do that too. A lot of people do that now. Write about sex using colloquialisms, comforting vernacular. I remember somebody tried to start a rival advice column to mine in Seattle a million years ago. And they were using the sexual Sanskrit because it was a more grown-up newspaper than ours was. And I would say sucked a cock in my column. And she wrote in her column, I licked a penis, which actually sounds so much more graphic and gross. Because you kind of pictured her like an ice cream cone.
Yeah.
And that confuses people too.
Comfortable. Yeah. And that's what you guys do in your book and on your show too. You use the language people use. And I don't want to take credit for that. There's a lot of kind of like sex positive movement stuff that was getting off the ground in the early 90s. But before the early 90s, you did not see that in print.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to ask you. So as a columnist, like a sex columnist, since the columnist, I can't say columnist, since the 1990s, which is incredible because I'm sure there's been so many shifts since then. That's 30 plus years, you said. So podcasting since 2006, right? That was when which podcasting was in its infancy then. I mean, there were like maybe 100, right? You could find some.
Now there's like over 2 million and growing. Yeah.
2.5
Everyone started
plus
podcasts
million.
every day.
Yeah, so, I had it all to myself and now I have to compete with fucking Michelle Obama.
Exactly. Everybody and their mom and Michelle Obama has a podcast. So what major shifts have you witnessed since the birth of your human sexuality career, really?
Oh God, so many shifts, including, in the early 90s, there was that sort of shit posting, shit talking edgelord stuff. And that was all over my column that my column has a lot of humor in it and a lot of jokes in it. I think if people are laughing, it sets them up to learn. Like things can lodge themselves in your head more easily if you've had a laugh while you're listening to it or reading about it. Also, if you write it in a funny, amusing way, or you talk in a funny, amusing way, it pulls people in who then, when you get serious, will give you the time to be serious and will pay attention. But, 30 years ago, I reached for jokes. 30 years ago, I didn't think asexuality existed. I didn't even know about it. 30 years ago, I didn't think male bisexuality existed or was credible. Now I think it exists and is very credible. I learned as much writing my column about human sexuality as I hope some of my readers did. It was as much an education for me. The first time I wrote about the clitoris, I put it in the wrong place.
That's awesome.
You couldn't just Google clitoris if you were like some 26-year-old gay guy who's starting to write a sex column and know everything about it in 2 minutes. I had to go find somebody and ask her about it or go to a library and look it up, and I didn't. And it turns out the clitoris is not on the soft palate. That's where mine is. It's not where yours was. But I didn't know that in 1990. Actually, I didn't say it was on the soft palate. I assumed it was way up the vaginal canal. That's how ignorant I was. Now I can draw you a map. I'm like one of those people who's a savant, autistic, and can draw you a map of the Tokyo subway system, but has never been to Japan. That's me at Cunnilingus and the Female Anatomy. I've never been to Japan, but I can draw you a map of that subway system.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm like, yeah, I can't draw a straight, I can't even draw a straight line for the life of me. So I'm not even going to try to compete with you in your artistry skills. Okay. So I like this topic of language, and we'll discuss your book, Savage Love from A to Z. And you actually said that you like a long subtitle. So I'll read your long subtitle too, because we have one: advice on sex.
Wait, we counted the subtitle, like the words yesterday, and we're like, oh, we
have more.
We Dan's, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
So it's Savage Love from A to Z: advice on sex and relationships, dating and mating, exes and extras. Yes, our subtitle is longer, and I don't know if that's a great thing on our end. But anyways, before we go into discussing the language of the book, I had a question about the shifting language regarding sex and gender that in my opinion, has always been happening and is currently seeming maybe a little bit more. I don't know, people are having some issues with it. I hear people all the time wait, why are we adding these new words? I've actually heard people say they don't add new words to the dictionary. I'm like, actually, yes, they do regularly. New words are going to the dictionary. every year. So what is your advice for people who are having a hard time with changing language? And an example for me would be like non-binary, they, them.
That's a huge one. My partner struggles so much. And I'm like, dude, stop being a straight dude. Like a 55-year-old straight man that is being ignorant right
compute.
Now. Yes.
Yeah. I think two things can be true at once, that there are words and terms and names for things now that we didn't have before that are useful. And for many people, very empowering. There are also some people out there who are playing fucking games and want things to be confusing and opaque and want language to not bring people in or open things up, but to close things down. So there's kind of an in-group exclusionary sorting that goes on with some of the more finely sliced, how many fucking pride flags do we need? Like, maybe I'm old about some of this, but to create a sexual orientation out of every personality trait, every preference, to me seems leaning too hard into this idea that identity is sacrosanct. And so if you have to describe everything that there is about you as identity so that it's somehow legitimate, as if it can't be legitimate even if it's just part of your personality or your preferences or your tastes, which are, I'm 60 years old almost. Your preferences, personality, tastes, those things are fluid. I think those things are way more fluid than gender and sexuality. And so locking them in as identity traits and, having the flag tattooed on your butt, whatever your personal pride flag is, to me seems limiting. So they, them, non-binary, asexual, biromantic, heteroromantic, all of these things I think are terrific. I've really advocated for this understanding of heteroromantic, homoromantic, and biromantic. I think that's helped a lot of bisexual people identify as bi, who used to think because they weren't equally attracted romantically to men and women, they weren't really bi, or bi didn't describe who they were. And when we cleft those things apart and sorted them, suddenly a lot of ways that people behaved made sense. And so I'm for a lot of this, these new terms. On the other hand, there are some people out there who seem to want to lay in wait to get offended because they were waving the allosexual pride flag and you didn't know what that was. Most people don't know what allosexuals are.
What with the heteroflexibles one that became problematic.
They get triggered by this.
Like you're making bi people invisible,
we've been called out. Well, I was called out on our show for saying heteroflexible.
Yeah.
And
why? Why should you be called out on that? Everybody gets to pick the terms that like feel right for them.
Yeah.
Somebody identifies as whatever, you're not allowed to question that. Unless you're allowed to question that somehow.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to say I don't think sapiosexuality is a thing. And people blow up at me. And then some of those same people will turn around and say they don't think homosexuality is a thing.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everyone just has to have their like noses all up in other people's business. Like
you've created the Monogamish, which I think
it's on our list actually.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to skip. I mean, okay, I don't want to skip, but that to me is so genius. And I don't think that's disgracing monogamy, right? Like saying monogamish or non-monogamy. I feel like that's a brilliant way to categorize folks that are, and now I'm just like, they're monogamish. Yes.
And I know people who are, I think heteroflexible is a great way to describe a certain kind of mostly, monogamish means mostly monogamous. Like usually when you're having sex is with your partner, maybe every once in a while you two have an adventure together, or even some people use it just to mean we're monogamous, but we acknowledge that we sometimes experience attraction or desire for others and we don't have to hide that from each other. Right. But heteroflexible, like mostly straight, but every once in a while, some incidental same-sex contact in a three-way, you're comfortable with that. That's what heteroflexible means. And that doesn't negate the existence of bisexuals or pansexuals. It means something distinct and different. And anybody who gave you grief about that, you shouldn't have back on your show.
They were on our show.
They were a listener, and we appreciate feedback when it's presented in a way that is positive, and we're like, or even if it's critical, if it's in a way that we're like, wow, we didn't mean to offend anyone. However, you can't please everyone, and you probably know you've been doing this for a long time. And so speaking of language, there's so much that you offer in your book. I love it's Savage Love from A to Z. So you created a lot of different not only terms, but there's an acronym that I want more details about.
We're going to start with the D.
Yeah, we're going to start with the D. It's not even the dick. We all know what that vitamin D is. So let's talk about the DTMFA. Can you talk about what DTMFA is? Because I want to use it.
We're already. You guys know you give sex and relationship advice too. Like 80% of the questions, sometimes it feels like I'm in this relationship. I love them. I love him. It's great. Da 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 da. But, every once in a while he picks up a nail gun and shoots a couple of nails into my leg. And I've asked him not to. And it's just like, oh my God, dump the motherfucker already. I think this is particularly a problem with women because of the way women are socialized to defer to men, to prioritize men's feelings, that women often need permission from friends or girlfriends or sex advice columnists to end a relationship, that they don't feel that they have the right to end a relationship without, often what I get is without their male partner's permission. I've tried to break up with them and he won't agree to me ending the relationship. It's like, oh, no. This is the one place where consent
you don't have to agree.
Yeah.
It's not a conversation. You have to win the argument to get out of a relationship. You just need to say the words.
Yeah.
And so it sometimes felt like half my mail was I started jokingly calling it DTMFA, like dump the motherfucker already. And I had a file and I was like, oh, I should just put that in the column. And I did one day and it kind of took off and people began to use it.
I want to use that. Amy and I have been criticized. I know this isn't about criticism. I just wonder if you've had the same experience for people thinking that we tell folks to leave a relationship more often than we should. They're like, well, we've had like
we rarely say that. By the way,
these are the options, but sometimes
you
got to call a spade, and maybe it is time to move on. We didn't say DTMFA, but now we could and be like, yo, as Dan Savage says, dump that motherfucker.
Well, my experience is often the opposite. Is that I like to tinker and try to save relationships, and I think it's. A lot of people out there listening are too quick to go for divorce. You should get a divorce, as if that's an easy thing, as if that's not an enormous lift, as if somebody might have other reasons to stay in the relationship or, are resigned to staying in the relationship. And how do you tinker with that relationship to make it more bearable or rewarding or whatever? And I'm often under the hood tinkering while my listeners and readers are shouting, just tell them to get a divorce, just tell them to break up. So even though I coined DTMFA and I often find myself saying, oh my God, dump the motherfucker and you don't need to win the argument. You just need to say the words. I get the opposite grief that I'm not quick enough to say it's a deal breaker, leave the relationship, or this is unforgivable. I'm the guy who says that you should be able to get past an affair. And, the call that you talked about us taking together on my show, I'm the jerk who thinks sometimes cheating is the least worst option for all involved, including the person being cheated on. Sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to pass out those permission slips.
Yeah. Some people that listen to our show, they get a little triggered or activated by us talking about non-monogamy. We don't talk about non-monogamy in a way we're saying everyone should be non-monogamous. We just highlight all the variations of non-monogamy. And when it's triggering to people, my perception is they have some underlining issues with it based on personal experiences, like they were cheated on or lied to, or someone wanted to have
they were
a
cheated on and lied to in a monogamous relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
So having monogamous relationships isn't some force field that protects you from betrayal or adultery or infidelity.
Yeah.
And also the craziest thing everyone does now, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I'm sure you've talked about it. Micro infidelities.
Oh, is that like justifying like little like emotional love affair kind of things?
It's identifying everything as cheating. Looking at porn is cheating. Having a work friend of the opposite sex is cheating. Sending an email to your ex on her birthday or his birthday just to say,
"Oh fuck,
happy birthday!" Thinking of you, that's cheating.
That's too far. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah,
like this. People want to define cheating is unforgivable, then turn around and define everything is cheating, and then wonder why they're single again.
Yeah.
Man, that's a whole different. I'm never gonna get on board with the microaggressions. It's almost like micro shaming. Like, oh, you're gonna be friends with your ex. I'm like, if you are co-parenting with a partner that you had children with, fucking be friends with your ex and co-parent Come on.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're going to be the exes of most of the people we date.
This is true.
Like, you have a lot of little short-term relationships. I think, we talk about successful LTRs all the time. One of my sort of hobby horses is we need to talk about successful STRs. Short-term relationships can also be successes. And you're going to have a lot of exes. And if you're with somebody and they have nothing but horrible things to say about their exes, and none of their exes want to be friends with them. Red flag.
Oh my God, 100%. 100%.
And yet so many people identify being friends with the ex as the red flag when it's actually a green flag. It's a really good sign.
Yeah, totally. 100% agree. Yeah, I love that. Okay, I want to move to the next one. Let's move to F. We didn't move that far along in the alphabet on this one, but we just want to talk about fuck first. Please tell us why fuck first made its way in your book and why you're so passionate about fucking first.
30 years ago, the first February 15th rolled around, and I got questions from people who were disappointed that they didn't have sex on Valentine's Day. And I would have back and forth with these people after email came along. And I discovered pretty quickly that, people went out to dinner and had the coq au vin and a bottle of red wine and chocolate mousse and an appetizer and another bottle of wine. And yeah, of course you didn't fuck after that. Who wants to fuck after that? And I started saying to people, fuck first, fuck, and then go out for dinner on Valentine's Day if you must go out to dinner on Valentine's Day. And then any other day where it's like a holy sex day of obligation, where there's got to be sex or you're going to start to wonder if there's something wrong with the relationship. Fuck first, fuck before the wedding, fuck before the birthday party, fuck before your anniversary dinner, fuck before Valentine's Day dinner. Not to get the fucking out of the way, but just to build up an appetite for that Valentine's Day dinner. And you're always going to have a better experience on Valentine's Day if at 6:00 you have some granola and yogurt and a banana, and at 7:30 you fuck, and then at 9:30 you have a dinner reservation. Because the restaurant will be emptying out, they'll have lots of food they ordered that they need to get rid of, and your portions will be enormous, and you'll have worked up an appetite. And then if you go home, and you might even fuck again and then get fucked twice on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
But people will do this thing where they want to save sex for the end. And then it doesn't happen. And then they read into it not happening that there's something wrong with the relationship. And it's never save sex for the end. It's not about getting sex out of the way at the start. It's about making sure on those holy days of sex obligation that you actually get to it, which you're likelier to do if you didn't eat dinner.
I love that because I don't fuck as great when I'm full in general. I'm like,
Who
I
does?
don't want, and I love anal play. And I'm like, if I have a full belly of anything, I'm not going deep in there. So it's makes so much sense to me. And I've lived this for a long time. And we actually did an interview yesterday, Amy and I, and the interviewer was asking us about this concept. And I was like, it makes total sense. It makes total sense to me because I don't want to be all gassy, or there's some people get aggravated by the food they have eaten if they have dairy intolerances or whatever it is.
And you don't want to puke the coq au vin up into somebody's lap.
Ooh,
right?
That's not sexy.
Mid blowjob, you're sucking that cock.
A woman, I wear makeup if I fuck during or right before. I'm all prepped for my dinner, or I look sexy or an event. I'm like, no, you can't, because then if I'm sucking cock or anything, I don't want my makeup to have to be smeared. That's a whole different project. Okay. So maybe I'm high maintenance.
I like the smeared makeup, but it stays smeared. It's part of the hot sex thing, but I don't want to go out to dinner after the smeared makeup. I have to touch my makeup. So fuck that. Yeah. I like the fuck first. So we were saying this in the podcast yesterday that I need snacks regularly throughout the day just because of my body's makeup. And so I'm like, have a light appetizer or a snack, then the sex, then the meal. It works really well for me. Yes. Yeah. And then I'm all amped and ready.
You need a little fuel. You need something to go on.
Yeah.
In our house, that's just a banana and some granola, maybe.
Yeah, perfect.
And that carries you through. And then you work up an appetite for dinner.
You could have some CBD gummies or some THC gummies for appetizer.
That's your appetizer. Just get high as balls.
It's not the first time. So, okay. Let's move on from the fuck first, which I love, to talk about the GGG, the triple G, the G trifecta. So it stands for good, giving, and game. Can you share more about this?
GGG, good, giving, and game. within reason. Game is qualified. Good in bed, like you got to work on those skills. You got to be thoughtful. You also got to work with your partner, because what worked with one person might not be like ideal for the next person. You've really got to communicate. Giving means, I think, in the context of a long-term relationship, sometimes you do for your partner. Sometimes you have maintenance sex. Sometimes you give them pleasure without an immediate return on that. Hopefully the relationship is reciprocal, and sometimes they're meeting your needs or coming through for you when you're horny and they're not. And like, so that's giving. And game means up for anything within reason. And one person's reasonable is another person's unreasonable. And there are fetishes that are too far for anybody to expect a partner to indulge them. But, if your partner has a foot fetish, okay, you can't do that. People will literally say to me, I would take a bullet for my partner, but you won't let your partner lick your feet? Come the fuck on. And I'm really conscious of, when I say this to women, I'm telling women sometimes, do something that you don't want to do in bed. Do something that you don't want to do, that he wants to do. And that is weird, and can it be weaponized or be coercive? Nobody should do anything that leaves them traumatized, curled up on the fetal position on the floor crying. But sometimes it can really expand your taste, your repertoire, your interests, if you step outside your comfort zone for a partner and do something that they wanted to do, and they will hopefully do things that you want to do, and you'll have more sexual compatibility, more sexual overlap, and that can strengthen your relationship. There's a sex researcher at the university, or Queen's University in Ontario, named Amy Muse, who studied, I can't remember what she called it. She came up with a sex researcher name for it. But she proved in her studies, working with couples, that this thing that I'd always been talking about, like sometimes you do for your partner, sometimes you go there and you meet a need of theirs to give them pleasure. And she found that improved relationship satisfaction, not just for the person being indulged, which you would expect, but for the person doing the indulging, that they felt closer, more connected, better about the relationship. The person who was stepping outside their comfort zone and doing for their partner. This is a gray area, though, because, one person's very kinky request is another person's like practically vanilla sex, and vice versa. So you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but sometimes we react negatively to a request because it wasn't something we wanted to do or we ever thought of. And it kind of sex negativity in the culture makes us go, oh no, when what we need to say is like, oh, and think about it.
Yeah.
Because you may grow together to enjoy your partner's kinks or sexual interests or sexual erotic scripts. And for women, it's usually less discrete kinks and more kind of erotic scripts that speak to them. And I'm making generalizations about 4 billion people. There'll be hundreds of millions of exceptions. The exceptions are likely to listen to shows like mine, shows like yours. So anybody out there who's bumping on that, I see you. I know that you're exceptional, but these trends are broadly true. Yeah. Men might, be into high heels or, latex or some very specific thing, and women are likely to be into sort of a mood or a script. And meeting those needs, especially across that gendered divide, men and women, man, sometimes as a gay guy, I think, boy, men and women are just not right for each other.
Yeah, what the fuck is with that? It makes it so backwards.
So anything that you can do to like be righter for each other and reach out across that divide is going to strengthen your relationship. And that's what GGG is all about. It's not about everybody has to be kinky. Everybody has to do whatever their partner wants. Nobody gets everything that they want. But you should err on the side of going there with your partner if you can, and having an expansive idea about sex.
That's the thing. I wish women could. Well, the women that I would want to date could grow a penis, because I love penis. But I've been with women, and I always miss a cock, and a silicone one doesn't do it for me. I'm like, I need the cock. So but I feel you. They're so different. Men and women are so different.
This is the cock loving club right here. We all love
gay men and straight women. Like, is there any relationship better than that? Except when it comes to the sex.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
You
one
know,
thing when you were sharing that too, with the part about like kind of, I'm thinking of like moving outward out of yourself a little bit or a lot of bit, but not to the point where you're going into like the panic freak the fuck out zone. And we talk about, and this isn't ours, but the yes, no, maybe list. Like, yes, I want to try this. I'm a maybe to this. I'm a no to this. I think a lot of people are really quick to just add things to the no list because they heard a story about it not being great, or it just brings up some feeling of being like uncomfortable or weird or unusual, or maybe they had an experience with it that wasn't that great. And I feel like when a lot of people take time to actually feel into their nose, a lot of them might be a maybe. There might be a little spaciousness. You just have to like take that, if you want to take that step, to feel into them and see, maybe is that really a hard no, or is there like a little opening to trying some variation of that to meet my partner?
And, one of the things my husband and I always say to each other when it comes to sexual exploration or either of us stepping outside our comfort zone is, what's in it for me? Mm-hmm. Right? If you're the person doing the indulging, what can be in that for you? The satisfaction and the affirmation of how much power you have to turn on your partner. Like, you don't get anything out of having your feet massaged or licked or incorporated into sex, but to see how like insanely turned on your foot fetishist partner is by your feet, that itself can be a turn on for you if you are open to that kind of, responsive desire or that kind of, expansive notion about what is erotic. And it's not just about like the items on column A, column B, column C, yes, no, maybe. It's about interactions and interpersonal dynamics. And that dynamic can be sexy enough, the power, the interplay to make something that wasn't even on any of your list, wasn't on your yes, no, or maybe you never even thought of it. It can make that erotic for you because your partner's so turned on and so grateful.
Yeah, we've been talking about trying to start up a OnlyFans for April's feet. Everyone, if you're interested, please email us and let us know how interested you are, so we'll actually get it going. Okay, well, we're fast forward to
people and feet though. Like, I mean, I more and more I've been hearing about. I love it, and I'm like, what? Like, I want to know what to do with my feet though. If I have them, do you just show them? Do you just like, do I
Dan's gonna manage your
banana
OnlyFans for you?
What do I do?
I think
I don't know if you have them. Actually, I've never seen all of you. Just like from the ribs
like,
up.
Does she even have feet?
I don't know if you have feet or not. I can't vouch for your feet. But I think it's wonderful. Like, why should boobs get all the attention forever?
Seriously.
I'm with you on this. I just want to know what to do with them. Because my boobs I could figure out.
I think what you would do is have the OnlyFans people make requests of what they want you to do with the photos. Like, sometimes they want to see like the backsides of feet. Sometimes they want to see your feet dirty. They want to see the toenail polish. They want to see chipping toenail polish.
It really depends on the foot fetishes.
Yeah, totally.
It's like some people, it's called partialism, where there's, the parts of our brain that like wire us to be into butts or boobs. It just wired their brain to be into feet. And you don't have to do anything with your feet. It's just the foot. It's like having the boob in your hand. Having the foot in your hand is as much a turn on. Other people, the foot is symbolic of domination or submission or degradation. Like, they're down at your feet. And so to know somebody's into feet doesn't give you all the information that you need about what they want from your feet or what they're going to get out of your feet or put into your feet.
I could see April's just into someone bowing down her feet. She had the smile on her face.
I just stylize. How do I present my feet to be, I want to stylize my feet because I'm all into the aesthetics of them.
I think we'll work on this later on air.
It's come up so many times in the last few interviews we've done with multiple people. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is a sign from the universe, like, April, get your feet on the interweb.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people out there monetizing their feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Never post a foot pic for free.
No. So you want this foot pic, send me some Gucci's and then I'll put those shoes on. Yeah. Okay. Let's move to S. Okay. This one's kind of fun. And I didn't read about it in the book. I have some ideas. Secret perving. What the heck is secret perving?
We have had really important conversations about consent. When I started writing Savage Love, it was no means no, and then yes means yes, and centering consent, and it being affirmative and ongoing and active. And now we're having a whole wave of writing and criticism about consent not being enough. Christine Emba's really terrific book, Rethinking Sex, that knowing an interaction was consensual doesn't tell you whether it was good or that people left it feeling good about themselves, that consent is not the ceiling, it's the floor, right? So we've had these discussions about consent, and secret perving kind of for some people trips their wires about what's consensual and not consensual. So somebody's got a, going to go back to foot fetish. Somebody's got a foot fetish and gets a job in a shoe store where they're handling people's feet. Is that allowed? And how do you disallow it if you want to disallow that? How do you know for sure that the person who helped you try on shoes wasn't gratified by that in some way that you wish they weren't, right? You can't control that. And we actually move through the world with a lot of people secret perving all around us. There's the businessman in the business suit in the business meeting who's wearing, women's underwear and garters and stockings under his suit. And he's really turned on by the fact that he's wearing all this in this room with all these people who don't know. Is he violating their right to consent to be involved in his perversions, in his perving, right? And I think it's allowable. Think of the couple that goes out to dinner and they both have remote control vibrators in each other. And they each have the control in their hands. And they're kind of zapping each other, and one's trying to order and the other's dialing it up, and they're squirming in their seat. And the waiter's like, what the fuck is wrong with these two? But doesn't know, is that allowed? And if part of their turn on is doing this in a room full of people who have no idea, is that allowed? And I think that's allowed. They call it secret perving. And so long as your secret perving is secret, it's allowable, it's permissible. So that means, if you're the guy who works in the shoe store and you have a foot fetish, you can't pant, you can't drool, you can't flush, you can't have visible erections. You have to have enough self-control that the other person can't perceive it. Not whether you think you're showing it or not. It really depends on the other person's perceptions. And then it's allowable. And secret perving makes the world go round, and it's really sexy and fun. And people do it all the time. And I don't want secret perving to have to go away because consent is important. But we have erotic in our lives, and we have erotic sort of whirligigs in our heads that are spinning all the time. We can't put them on a shelf or turn them off. And one of the things that makes life pleasurable and enjoyable is at certain points, you're having an erotic experience that no one around you is even aware that you're having. And I don't want to forbid those. I think those give spice to life. And if people are secret perving around me, I don't care. I'm all for it.
Perv away.
Are there people that push back from I have no issue. I secret perv all the time, probably. I do Kegels, and I get kind of in the grocery store, and I'm like, oh, I'm getting a little turned on right now, but this cucumber, and
you slut.
And I'm like, that's secret perving. I guess it's not consensual. I'm like, I'm not harming anyone.
Everything we do.
That's what I'm saying. So what I just think secret perving should be okay.
Yeah.
Perving on people is not okay. Secretly perving on a circumstance or in a public place, absolutely okay. And if people were honest, everybody would admit that they've done it at some point.
And it reminds me of, it's different, but similar for my brain is when we were talking about jealousy on your show yesterday. I think how it's all about what you do with it, right? I think we were answering a sex question on your show about someone feeling a turn on in a massage environment, and am I creepy? But no, you're not creepy, because these are just thoughts and feelings in your body that you're not putting outward and changing someone else's experience without them consenting to that. So I like that distinction. And I am a secret perv, and I'm proud.
Yeah, I guess.
And I'm a not so secret perv sometimes, but also I have secretly perved, and it's a blast. It's almost like, when you were a kid and you had to find a place to have sex on the sly, right? You had to sneak somebody to your room, and you had to be super quiet because your parents were there and you didn't want to get caught or busted. And part of the fun of secret perving is recreating for yourself in adulthood that fear of getting busted or caught. And that's exciting. And people want that. That's what to be a part of their erotic lives.
One fun story. I won't say the names, but somebody used to work at Pure Pleasure back in the day, April, who she was afraid of the dentist, so she would wear the butt bling butt plug in her ass to the dentist. And it wasn't because this is different than perving, but if they found you have a butt plug in right now, it might be a thing. But she did it because it helped her to stop thinking about how much she hates the dentist or how scared she is of all the tools in her mouth, and she just focused on the butt plug. Loved it. Thought it was brilliant.
I completely agree. I support that lifestyle choice.
I was always hoping when I would go through the airport, like TSA pre-check in the US, that they would secret perv. I'm like, I think I look good under this, but then I learned that they can't even see your body. So then I was like, damn
But if
it.
you had a metal butt plug, I'm pretty sure they'd see
So
that.
maybe that will be me letting them secret perv and be like, guess what? You're welcome. That's right.
That's not secret though, because then they're seeing it. Okay, anyways.
But but isn't that up to me?
What about this has come up. People wear male chastity devices, locking cock cages. If you wear one to the airport,
they're going to see it. It's either
they're
going to
gonna see
beep
it,
one
and you're
machine or
gonna
they're going to
get
see in the other one. Yeah.
frisked.
Yeah.
And for some people, being caught like that is a turn on. See, that's a point where I think it passes from secret perving to a non-consensual involvement of a civilian in your kink.
Yeah.
Because if you're turned on because they're mortified and they know that you're deriving some pleasure from how they're feeling about having to pat down your cock cage that you can't take off, I think that's not okay.
It's like
But
the same as
wearing the
flashing.
cock cage,
Yeah.
wearing the cock cage to the gym and somebody else looking at your crotch long enough to realize you're wearing a chastity device under your shorts and that being a little bit of a turn on, well, that person was nominating themselves to participate in your kink by staring at your dick long enough to figure it the fuck out. And it's different. So I get like Talmudic about this. I turn into a rabbi and we want to like parse these things to figure out what's permissible or not.
Okay, well, I'll rethink the metal butt plug, but maybe a silicone butt plug at the airport.
A silicone butt plug at the airport.
Okay. I will.
And
I
you
will
can
go
get,
with that.
and there are plastic male chastity devices that you can wear through metal detectors.
Well, then
without setting
there.
them off.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like
options.
this. See, that's the neutrality I'm going for with secret perving, because I'm all about secret perving, but perving, no. Okay, let's move into something, because you have a top tip, which I love, especially in regards to sex advice, and it's, what are you into? And can you talk about why this is such an important question?
Gay guys are better at sex, know more about sex, and have more sex. And it's not because we're magic. It's because we have to communicate with each other in a way that straight people can, but often don't. When a man and a woman get to consent, the conversation about sex usually stops. It's going to be PIV, vaginal intercourse. That's what straight sex is. Maybe there'll be some oral in the foreplay and some rolling around, but this is what we're building to, and we don't have to talk about it anymore. When a guy goes to bed with a guy, what happens? You have to talk about it. You know, maybe anal is a default setting for a lot of gay guys now. It wasn't always so much, but you had to ask who was going to fuck who. And I call them the 4 magic words. It's the beginning of every first time same-sex male encounter. One guy will say to the other guy, I've been in situations where both guys blurted it out simultaneously. What are you into? And at that moment, you can rule anything in, anything out. You can say, I'm not into anal, or I don't feel up to anal right now. I'm just into oral, just in mutual masturbation. I just want to roll around. I want to do this. I want to do that. And it's really empowering. And, you know, you can't be gay unless you manage to say something to people about who you are. That's hard for a lot of people to say at first. And so saying what it is that you want to your sex partner and having these conversations after you get to consent, that the conversation continues about what you're into, is really empowering. For me, when I was like 18 years old and I first started having sex, 16 years old, sex with guys, for me as a teenage boy to be asked by a male sex partner, what is it that you want, expect, desire? What are you up for? Was so empowering. And when I started writing Savage Love, I would get questions from women and I would think, no one has ever asked her what she's into, ever. And how sad that is, that a woman doesn't have that same ability, having sex with a man, like I've had sex with men, to rule anything in, anything out. And I'm constantly saying to straight guys, if every time you said yes to sex, your ass got fucked, you'd say yes less often. If you want the women that you're dating to say yes to sex more often, maybe she's not always the one getting penetrated. Maybe sometimes it's just oral with you going down on her. Maybe sometimes it's mutual masturbation or toys and porn. And then you'd have sex more. You need to have, I'm always telling people, have a really broad definition of sex and you'll have more sex. Have a really narrow definition of cheating and you get cheated on less often. I know those things are in tension kind of, but it actually, that contradiction can save your sex life and save your relationship. And so, yeah, I just think straight people should steal what are you into from gay people the way we stole marriage from you. And ask each other
So
that.
much for you.
And then, you know,
No, I almost missed that one.
a gay guy says to me, like, not into anal. And I'm like, okay, great. We'll do all these other things. I think if a woman said to the average straight man, not into vaginal, his head would explode because he'd be like, what, you just said you wanted to have sex with me. And now you're saying you don't have sex at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, there's all these other things that we could be doing
and
that I might want to do or might be up for. And guys, if you want women to be, I hear this all the time, you know, straight guys saying they wish women were more like gay men.
Mm-hmm.
You want women to be more like gay men? Ask them what they're into.
Yeah.
And then roll with it when they say, I'm going to fuck your ass tonight, or I just want you to go down on me, or go down on each other, or whatever. And regard everything that's not PIV, not as a sad consolation prize, but as sex.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm hearing the distinction, because we actually have talked about this on our show a lot, where people, including ourselves, get a little frustrated when we're like being intimate with someone, starting to have sex or having sex, and they're like, what do you like? And so I'm hearing the difference between what are you into and what do you like. What are you into is happening probably before sex and maybe during and you know, all these other times, and not just like we're in the heat of the moment and then you freeze because they're like, tell me what you like, I don't know, like we're doing, try some things right now, and like keep on going. So is that it? It's like it's something that happens before the sexual engagement?
Usually people, but when people say what do you like in the moment as you're having sex, they often mean like, I'm penetrating you. Do you like fast or slow? Do you like deep or hard? Do you want me to slam your cervix, or do you want me just to like tease the outer limits? What do you like in the moment while you're having sex is usually about intensity or sensation. What are you into is about who you are sexually, what turns you on, what you want to do. And then you have conversations about, you know, I want to be fucked. Well, how do you want to be fucked? Mm-hmm. What are you into is I want to be fucked or not. What do you like is how you want to be fucked.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Perfect distinction. Okay, so you have written, I believe it's 5 books, and I have the names here. That we have The Commitment, Skipping Towards Gomorrah, The Kid, American Savage, and your latest, Savage Love from A to Z. Can you please tell us a little bit about all of them, or
your favorite?
Your favorites, or the ones you want to share a little bit about, so our listeners have an idea of what you've written about.
The Kid is about my then boyfriend and I adopting our son. The Commitment is about my then boyfriend and I deciding to get married and what that meant. Skipping Toward Gomorrah was a book about purity politics, and not the purity politics of the left, but the puritanism of the right. And it was a defense of a lot of things that people regarded as sinful. I took the 7 deadly sins and wrote about 7 deadly sins in America, and sort of defended pleasure and sin, what other people might regard as sin. American Savage is a collection of essays about politics, my mother's death, about assisted suicide, about Obamacare, about guns. It's just like my thoughts on a lot of different things that I think as a sex writer I'm allowed to talk about. I always tell people who tell me to stick to sex and leave politics alone that as soon as politicians leave sex alone, I will leave politics alone. Until then, I'm going to talk about politics because they won't shut up about sex.
We've heard that on our show too. They've said that to us. Like, stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane. And we're like, are you fucking kidding me?
I thought it was just because we were women and that men received that less.
I didn't. I'm like, I feel I feel better about knowing that you've
not that we wish it upon you.
No.
I get it all the time. Stick to dildos or sit on a dildo. But yeah, whenever
there's politics in dildos, everyone. Okay.
And dildos and politicians.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They're inside the politicians sometimes. Mm-hmm.
Well, you're
some of them are secretly perving on the floor of Congress.
Of course.
Know somebody's got a toy in or women's underwear on.
Oh yeah, that's happening. Yeah, no doubt about that. And then also we've been talking about Savage Love from A to Z, but if you want to give us just like a little highlight for the people that are listening about what this book, what inspired you to write this book, what this book is about.
It's a collection of essays tied to the 30th anniversary of the column, where I just, worked with Joe Newton, who does the illustrations for Savage Love and has for 20 years, and does these beautiful, almost like kids storybook style illustrations for the filth in my column that are so witty and so funny. And he wanted to bring out a book with his illustrations beautifully reproduced on really high quality paper with some essays by me. So we just took like A is for anal, B is for, I think, bondage. Now I don't remember. It's been a few years since I wrote this book. And I like just did a kind of savage love download about each of these topics. G, of course, was for GGG. I think D was for DTMFA, and took the big ideas that I've been turning over in Savage Love for 30 years and developing and working on, and dumped them all into one book.
And the illustrations are beautiful. The content's
they're playful.
Incredible. It reminds me of like Where the Wild Things Are a little bit, right? Because it has that whimsical nature and very relatable, fun for everyone. It's a great coffee table book to have out because it's a conversation starter. So if y'all are out there, not only check out Dan's podcast because it's been out for ages and it's still one of my favorite podcasts, especially in sexuality. And you're just a legend. I really do value. Thank you for the work that you've done for this world. Thank you for the consistent contributions and the evolution of your work, and for your time being here with us. Can you tell folks not only where they can buy your books, but if they want to find you, we're going to find you. Can you tell them, how to find more of Dan Savage?
I have everything of mine now at my own website, savage.love. And there you can find my column, my podcast, struggle session, which I do every week, where I respond to listener comments and reader comments and feedback, and go off on length about it. My bonus podcast, Sex and Politics, where I have longer form conversations with guests like Michelle Goldberg from the New York Times, Jamie Kirchick, who's a writer for Tablet. And yeah, it's all there at savage.love. I'm on Instagram at Dan Savage, Threads at Dan Savage, Blue Sky at Dan Savage. I'm still on Twitter at fake Dan Savage, but I feel very conflicted about it. And thank you for the very kind words. And what you guys do is amazing. And that you picked it up, the sex positive conversation, to continue to run with it yourselves is terrific. And I love your show.
Well, we adore you, Dan. Thank you so much. And to all of our listeners out there, be sure to check out Dan's books and his podcast and your column. I'm gonna have to check out the Sex and Politics now, because I love that you get political. It drives a big desire in me that I love getting political, but not on this channel. So thank you for that, because I need a little bit of insertion from time to time to motivate me. Hey, so to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for being part of Amy and I's Shameless Sex Revolution. We love you all so very much, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Ciao for now.